Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me for another card making tutorial. This is Angie. Today I'm going to be using some of my favorite inks in my stash, my Simon Hurley dye inks. Now I'm going to be working with an old floral stamp set that I've had in my stash for ages. This is a layered florals, which is ideal for showing you how great these inks are. I'm just using Bee Sting, Crown Me, Guppy for the floral elements, and then for the flower centers I'm going to be using a little bit of Over the Moon, and then for the leaves I'm going to be using Later Gator and Tropical Tango. So I'll pretty much walk you through the Crown Me flower right up until the end. So layer 1 goes down. I'm making sure that I'm getting really good transfer of that stamp, giving it a good press down. And then while I've got the stamp in there and it's got the ink on it, I'm doing a second generation stamping, and Simon Hurley inks are fantastic for that, provided your ink pads are quite juicy. So layer 1's gone down. I've done the ghost print or second generation stamping, and then I'm going in with layer 2. Now I'm using the exact same ink pad, but going down over the image, and it just gets that real depth of color, and it's even quite visible here in that second generation stamping. This stamp set does have about 3 or 4 layers, but even just here I'm giving you a little bit of a close-up just with the 2 layers, and you can really see that depth of color from just one ink pad. So that's the Bee Sting, the second generation Bee Sting. The orange one was the Guppy ink. You can see one ink pad's giving you all that color, all that variation just by layering up. And then here's the Crown Me. Just so much depth of color. And to save you the boredom, I've done the rest of the stamping off screen. I've filled in all the spaces around and popped a sentiment in the middle of each card. I'm just going to give you a real close-up here again of that depth of color that I was able to achieve in each card. And you can just see there's, like, it literally looks like I've used about 3 different ink pads at least. So very, very impressive how the color builds up. Then I decided I was going to finish the cards as an eclipse technique. So I've basically just located a few frames that fit nicely around the large sentiments that I've used in the middle of each card. And then I just do a dry layout on my desk to see if it looks kind of how I was picturing in my mind. I've basically taken the frame out of the dark one and switched it over to the second generation stamping one, and vice versa, as you can see here. And I'm quite happy with how it turned out actually. So I'll show you the assembly process here with the red card. So I've basically mounted the outer part of the frame onto a card front, or a card base actually, and then I've used the frame just kind of as a placeholder to make sure that I can get the sentiment laid perfectly in the middle of the card. So you'll see that I'll just quickly press this down, and the frame is still loose. I'm actually going to be foam mounting the frame to give it that eclipse sort of layered look. So here you'll see it on the first generation stamping. I am just popping some double-sided tape down on the card base and then mounting the frame section onto the card. I'm trying to get it as squarely lined up as I can. And then again, using the frame as a placeholder. Given it's just a placeholder, I don't think it really mattered if I had it the right way around, but I just prefer to have it the right way. And then I secure the middle part down. And ATG is absolutely awesome for quickly applying double-sided tape. So that's one of my favorite tools on my craft room. And as you can see, the frame comes out. So now I'm grabbing some double-sided foam and I'm just applying it along the octagon frame here at the back, removing the adhesive and placing the frame back into place. So it gives you that great dimension and the eclipse look. And I've done the same thing with the second generation one. I've foam mounted the frame as well, so it gives you that dimensional look. And then all that's left to do is embellish. So I just grab a few sequins and scatter them here and there across the card, trying to do it in sort of odd numbers at the top and at the bottom to keep your eye moving and for that little bit of a visual triangle. And I was very happy with how much shimmer and shine that brought to the card. I did dabble a little bit with which colour sequins to use, but I did settle on the red and the green. So the red sort of across the floral elements and then the green across where the leaves were, and sort of just popping a little bit into that frame. I always like to do a dry lay so I can get a really good idea of what it's going to look like before I glue them down. And then I just use my pickup tool and secure them down. And then I'm going to give you a close-up of all the finished cards that I made in the session. So you can see, even though that second generation stamping is so light, it really is very, very effective. And I think the eclipse technique was the exact right way to use the second generation and first generation products together. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial.